Hello, this is Rob Mazak, and I'd like to take a moment to welcome you to the Life by Mazak podcast channel. Here on this channel, anything is possible. Any subject will and usually is discussed, and there's no telling how this message will unfold as we work through an idea, through an experience, or through a thought. These subjects come from the vast amount of information and experience through spirit, through life lessons, and from working with a lot of other people. Scripts are never used on this channel, and the message simply unfolds as the subject is discussed. Follow along and see where it leads us, or more specifically, where it leads me. These podcasts are produced in the hopes of helping others to benefit, to grow, and to excel in their own human experience. At Life by Mazak, we work towards helping you achieve wellness for your mind, your body, and your soul using many specialized services. Services that include psychic medium and tarot readings, quantum healing hypnosis, past life regression, intuitive Reiki healing, life coaching, and many other services. If you enjoyed this podcast, please click the like button and share this with others. Our goal is to reach as many people as we can with the knowledge that is shared on this podcast channel. Good day to everybody. I wanted to spend a little time on this particular podcast talking about a few things. Some of them seem very vague in definition, in ideas. And I also wanted to preface these things that I'm not really trying to convince anybody or prove anything or state things in here that are fact or that they are fact. And I just wanted to kind of convey my ideas and my experiences and some of the things I've been listening to, reading, researching over many years. But it seems to be theory these days, or a conglomeration of theories and things coming together. I just wanted to talk about some things, and it's primarily about consciousness and how that might link into what we would call reality. So I first wanted to kind of lay the groundwork on the term consciousness. In all these years, I really thought it was more the definition of being aware that you exist, right? Being aware of oneself. And the more I look at these definitions that I'm seeing in some of the high-level or common dictionaries that you can find online, it's kind of that way. But I don't know if even the scientific community completely understands it. But I wanted to read a couple of definitions first. I guess it's kind of what I was saying in a lot of ways, but in some ways it didn't make a lot of sense. So one of the definitions is the quality or state of being aware, especially of something within oneself. Now, I guess that's kind of what I was talking about, that we are aware of ourselves and that we're living. Because one of the definitions also talks about the normal state of conscious life. And sometimes that's like when you lose consciousness, or you get hit in the head and you go unconscious, where your conscious mind is turned off. So that's kind of what that's about. The other definition is the upper level of mental life of which the person is aware, as contrasted with unconscious processes. That's a big definition. I think what most of these put together are trying to say is that consciousness is the overall arching processes of being aware at many levels of our mind. And there's some controversy about whether that's the brain or not. We'll kind of circle back on that in a second. But we use mind as that non-physical type idea of what we would consider processes in our head, our skull, between our ears. And I think what these definitions are trying to say is that it's a culmination of the multiple levels of consciousness or conscious awareness we have within us in our mind. And I know there's at least a couple of major divisions of consciousness, and one being your conscious mind, which, if you've heard me say these things on other podcasts, it's about 5 to 10% of the activity of our mind, on a daily basis. The conscious mind is more of what you can physically control, or what you feel like you can physically control. You can think about things, do things, say, I'm going to go here, I'm going to do that, I must head to work, I got to get in the car. All these kind of things where you can kind of control what's going on in your mind, or at least feel like you are. And then there's that other percentage that is the subconscious or unconscious part, that is a program basically, or a bunch of programs that are running in the background that really kind of can run your life, control your life, protect you, do all the things that you were programmed to do through habitual actions, so you don't have to think about it. It's kind of that background program that runs, and you don't have to really think about things. Because if we had to think about things with our conscious mind every step of the way, every day, we wouldn't make it past the first couple of hours, because it would be very taxing, of course. So consciousness is kind of very elusive, even with the scientific community. I've been listening to a lot of scientists tonight and over the last couple weeks, but especially this evening, through a variety of platforms, through YouTube videos. TikTok is really a good source when you get on the right algorithm, and I was on that algorithm. There was a lot of people talking about these things, but by and large, it feels like even the scientific community as a whole, I don't think they completely understand consciousness or what it really is. There's been a lot of philosophers and scientists that are really tackling this question. It's really perplexing, because you have a brain, which is more of a mechanical and chemical process that seems to embody consciousness or memories or any of those things and thoughts. But I can tell you, if you do an autopsy after somebody dies, you won't find any thoughts in there. And they've done a lot of interesting studies. I couldn't quote what they are right now, but I've read lots of them over the years and looked at them, where they've looked at the ability of the consciousness, I guess you'd say, to exist outside of the body, or even in that moment of clinical death. And of course, we have story after story after story after story of near-death experiences where people have clinically died or literally died for a time, and they've been through experiences outside of their body. If the brain is technically died, what is exactly that phenomenon? What is going on there? I mean, I guess you could equate that to the certain chemicals being released. I've heard that too, in the dying process, that they give you that experience as you die, almost like it's a program that's been inserted or implanted within the human genome or DNA, whatever. I don't think that would just describe or validate every near-death experience, because I know people that have lost half of their brain, literally, and they still are functioning properly now. I mean, a little different personality, but they still can function without that other half of the brain. And if all sides of the brain or all parts of the brain are necessary for normal life and functioning and quote-unquote consciousness, then how do you explain that? How do you explain people being in very, very tragic car accidents or something like that, where they literally have crushed their brain to the point where it should not function whatsoever, even with that chemical process or any of that, yet they have these near-death experiences, and of course they can't have a near-death experience if they don't come back to consciousness or life. And so I don't think that we can completely explain any of this. I don't care how much science you throw at it, how much religion you throw at it, how much metaphysics you throw at it. I think it's a very complicated subject and a very interesting and complicated topic that is very difficult to get your hands around. And the other thing, though, that I think consciousness helps us understand is our world, or what we consider our world. And we're going to talk a little bit about that too. But back to consciousness. So if consciousness is simply being aware that you exist, that would mean that probably everything that exists has consciousness. I can't speak to what a rock would think, but it is energetic in nature, so it should have some kind of consciousness. We know animals are aware of themselves. They should have consciousness. So I don't think that it's just a human dynamic or a human gift that it only exists within the human race. I think that consciousness exists in all types of beings and energetic things. I don't think that we're just exclusive to that. And so that kind of lends me to the caveat or the segue into this reality. I wanted to kind of compare virtual reality and simulations to what consciousness might be. Like I said, I'm not here to prove or dissuade or say that we live in a virtual reality, but there's been a lot of interesting conversations about that from the scientific community, more so than any philosophers. And I don't think they completely understand it as well. But I was listening to somebody tonight, or some buddies, and they were saying a lot of the same things, is that when you have a simulated game, like the World of Warcraft, for example, or he named a few. I'm not a gamer, so I am familiar with the World of Warcraft. But in a game, a very high-level simulation type game or virtual reality game, you have players in the game, and you have non-player characters that interact. What's the difference between what we consider consciousness or being aware of ourselves versus a character in a game that is programmed to have a reality? Why would they not have a consciousness that they exist? Because within that virtual reality, it is really not much different these days, especially with our technology that's coming around, very, very high-level technology that makes it almost indistinguishable between what we would consider normal reality. And it's really not much different than what we think we experience. How can we draw the line or make a differentiation between what we are creating as virtual reality or simulation games that can go to the extent that we think of the world we live in? I mean, somebody was talking about some games that are out there that literally compute and produce a universe that is very similar to what we think the universe is, or what we've been taught, and that it can produce billions and billions of galaxies and all these things and the experiences just like we have here, or what we think we have here. It really is beginning to lend me to more of an idea that we are kind of programmed into something. You can call it a virtual reality or a simulation. You can call it the Matrix. You can call it all kind of things. But I don't know that. I'm just talking from my experiences and what I've been picking up on recently. And so as I was reading this information and kind of gathering some thoughts before I talk about it tonight, I decided I was going to go ahead and meditate and maybe connect with that information a little bit and see what I might get out of that. And meditation for me can be a lot of things. Sometimes I just listen, sometimes I ask a question, sometimes I get directions just automatically, whatever. And so it's just like any relationship you would have with a person that I have with my spirit guide, who I call Angel. You know, I can't prove that entity exists, but that's okay. That's not important. I think we all get a representation of that force outside of ourselves that makes us comfortable and makes it easy for us to communicate and conversate with the unlimited amount of information that exists outside of ourselves. I was speaking with her this evening. I do communicate with her a lot, but for some reason it hasn't been a lot of like face to face, like sitting down with somebody that you would do if you're going to have a conversation in this reality, in our world as a human being. And so I brought that up. I decided that we needed to do like a face to face and have a conversation. And she really kind of broke it down for me in a way that kind of makes sense. I may have talked about this before in other podcasts. Once again, not proof, but I just want to convey what I was given in a meditative state, which is also a level of consciousness that is not your normal everyday conscious mind activities. It is below that, but not all the way down where you're sleeping. So it's somewhere in between that. And what she was talking about was that we do in fact live in a very sophisticated, high-level, biological, mixed virtual reality or simulation, and that we use this from the what most people would call the spiritual realm, because we exist generally as energy outside of living a life in some way, shape, or form. It's hard to have experiences in an energetic state because there's no human emotions and time and all these things that we take for granted here, that we need to go out sometimes and experience things. And then sometimes when we get into these experiences, that we kind of get, as she would say, addicted to some of those feelings and those activities and things that happen, all the sexual connections or emotional connections, feelings, just all of that. And sometimes she says that once an entity or an energy, she didn't call it a soul, she called it an energetic entity, I think it was, energetic, something like that. I'll remember it in a minute. It's like having a soul, but you're an individual, unique imprint or energetic imprint that is part of the eternal cosmos, or eternity as she put it. We like to, in a lot of ways, as a soul or this energetic being, go out and have experiences and to learn things and to experience things that we're not going to get as an energy. And if you look at the reincarnation model, it's also to bring back the experiences over many lifetimes back to the source or where we came from, to add to the collective of the universe. She made it very clear that the only reason that she can project into this reality, which she has spoken to me about before, and she also said that I have heard many times, and she reminded me of that, the readings and things that I've had, that my soul or my energetic being, angelic being, is also projecting in here. And she said you can't very well project into something that's real, that's physical per se, but that it's more virtual or not electronic, but different from what we would imagine as a real world or a real reality. And so that really kind of struck home with me that we may very well be living in some kind of planned or determined or idealistically planned simulation. And I thought that was quite interesting. But I think that science is really struggling with trying to prove or solve many, many things. Consciousness is clearly one of them. And I know they have done experimentation that's kind of, quote unquote, proved that consciousness, or that awareness of oneself, or awareness of all there is, or whatever, is not necessarily a mechanical process within our brain. It's almost like that is the computing system, or the streaming from the computing system that feeds into our brain as like a little computer or hard drive and processor to work through this simulation and have the experience. I don't know if that makes any sense. In other words, we're like little virtual terminals within computers. If you know about computers at all, you can have a virtual computer on any computer. I mean, we do that with the Department of Defense. We log into a virtual computer or program like Windows through any machine through a VPN and all that. So you can have a computer within a computer. It's been around for a long time. So it's not anything that's a far stretch. But I do think that scientific community, from what I've been hearing a lot lately, is that we really don't know anything. I mean, we have ideas. I think what we can do is measure what's happening, but understanding what's happening, we've gotten better. The advent of quantum mechanics and quantum theory and quantum physics and all these things are helping us understand things a lot different. But I don't think we completely understand everything, and I doubt we ever will. Now, we've come a long ways. We really have. But one of the scientists was talking about something tonight that just I didn't know anything about, or I never thought about. Because we've always taken for granted that gravity has a certain measurement and it stays at a standard measurement. You know, it's just unchanging is what we've always been taught. Speed of light is supposed to be constant at 186,400 feet or miles per second, and it doesn't change. Well, when I listen to this particular scientist talk about it, it sounds like that is actually not entirely true. Over the years, there's been periods of time where the speed of light, however it's measured, and the weight or whatever you would classify for gravity, those findings in those measurements change, that they don't stay the same. So what they've done to solve it, according to him, is that they just decided what it's going to be, and they don't even bother looking anymore. However, a lot of people do measure it, and what they do is they take averages of these measurements over many years and publish that as the finding or the standard for measuring speed of light or gravity or whatever is going on. That kind of boggled my mind, because I've always been taught that the speed of light is that's just what it is. It's even talked about in the Bible. The tribe of Judah, or commonly known as the tribe of light, has 186,400 people in it. So, I mean, it's not a new idea. I guess I didn't understand that we don't understand, that we really don't understand. We are trying because we're human beings. We seek out these answers because we have a knowing, other than, like my dogs at the house. They don't care about that. They just want to make sure they got food in their bowl, and then they go for a walk. A much simpler way of living, I guess. Maybe not entirely as much fun, but they don't think about these things. The human mind or the human experience is way different. We want to seek, we want to find, we want to, most of the time, actually destroy. It is a paradigm that is almost like self-defeating in a lot of ways. And I think that the idea of a simulation or a virtual reality, whatever you want to call that here for this conversation, anyway, if that's in fact what we are living in, I don't know that for sure. These are just my experiences for quite a while, and more so recently, especially with the UFO phenomenon starting to unfold. And she did actually, let me backpedal just a little bit. So my spirit guide also alluded to that. She said that there are a lot of others, this is the way she put it, a lot of other entities and beings from outside of this simulation, is what I'll call it, that are very, very interested in how this is unfolding and how it's going to go. And it's almost like a big experiment in a lot of ways, she said, that people are watching, taking notes, and see how we are going to evolve this time around. Apparently we go through many iterations. We take ourselves out, simulation starts over. Things like that, I think, happen a lot. You can't even prove the age of the earth or the universe in absolute science, actually. Because if you listen to everybody out there that talks about the age of the earth or the age of the universe, I mean, you will find a unendless amount of ideas and measurements and facts as they state them. But there's just a lot of unknowing. We know more, or we think we know more than we really do. We do seem to be able to measure things a lot better, but I don't think we understand what we're seeing. I don't think we understand what is actually happening, at least from the scientists and science research that I've been looking at. I just don't see any real solid patterns or ideas that seem to be in agreement across the platform. Even a lot of the things that the big minds like, that Einstein put together, those things are starting to be questions as well. Just because you are one of the greatest minds on the planet and you've done your research and you've done a lot of different things doesn't mean you're right. And we have to really, I think, for ourselves, decide what that is for ourselves. And we all need to create our own truth, and that's just the way it is. Because what I think or what I believe or what I am leaning towards doesn't mean that it's the same for you. And it really, to be honest, doesn't matter what this reality is, because it doesn't really seem to change what we have to do. We still have, taxes to pay. We have jobs that we need to attend to, and bills and families, and we have to go on with our everyday life. So I don't think that proving one theory or another really matters. But just like everybody else that I talk about, I am curious too. And I mean, it would really be cool to see it somehow with my five senses, physically, or I guess physically see and experience whatever this reality really is. Because when you're seeing it through a meditative state and you're kind of going outside of yourself to see that, yes, it feels like a totally real and relevant experience. But I think in the back of my mind, and probably most everybody's mind that does that, it's still not the way we understand gaining experience or knowing. We think that it has to be solid and we have to see it, we have to touch it, smell it, all those things. And, I know we don't. But, it is a struggle as a human being to really have solid confirmation. And I can tell you, when you find somebody that believes in something and they're hard fast in it, there's no way that you'll ever change their mind, which is fine. We should be different. We should have our own unique knowing, understanding, belief system, our own truth. That's okay, because we're all doing our own individual lives and our own race and our own reasons for being here. Whether it's programmed or whether it's free will or whether it's whatever, it doesn't matter. We have to decide those for ourselves. And I do believe, though, that if we can say that we live in a simulation or a place like that, virtual reality, and we are given free will, which it seems like we have in a lot of ways, then we should be able to change that simulation, alter that path of ours to really do what we want to do. And I've been experimenting with that some, and there's a lot of things that have come to fruition for me doing things that way and trying to affect what happens and where I go and kind of money I make and all these different things. But there's some things that just seem to be really far out there that seem most impossible. But I think the real limit for us humans is not that anything is impossible. It's just that our belief in some of these things is impossible. I do believe that we can change our reality. We can do things differently. We can create as we go. We can create our lives. I don't think we're going to get out of this alive. I've talked about that a lot. I do believe that we're here for a time span and for very specific reasons. And once that hourglass runs out, then we're going to have to check out and go on to do something else. So, but I think while we're here, we really need to focus on what it is that we want to experience, and then go after that, put the work in and do it, because that's just the way things work. No pun intended, right? We've talked a lot about that. Anyway, those are some of my ideas about consciousness and this reality, and the fact that I don't think we really, really understand and know this reality or the universe or the physical universe or any of that any better than we have in the past. I think that we've gained so much information about it that it's confusing it even more. Sometimes a simple approach is the better way to do things. In my mind, if you get complicated, you really mess up your whole idea of your truth and your ideas of who you are and where you are. So I'm not saying we should stop. I'm just saying you have to figure that out for yourself. What makes it valuable and credible to you and not anybody else? So let's go after our own truth. Let's go after our own ideas and then work with that paradigm and create the life you want. I encourage you guys to go to my website so we can link up and have some conversations. I'd love to work with you guys. My website is lifebymazak.com, lifebymazak.com. I look forward to working with you. Stay strong and live your life.